Did you know that there are 4 questions you can ask that can change the trajectory of a design project? Well, I'm about to share them with you. Hey there, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Resourceful Designer, the podcast focused on helping you build a better design business. I am your host, Mark Decote, and today we're exploring something that could dramatically change how you interact with clients and enhance your project outcomes. We're going to talk about 4 power questions that every designer should be asking their clients. And I'm not talking about your typical, what's your favorite color kind of questions. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, Mark, I already have a list of questions I ask my clients. And that's great. Hopefully your list includes these 4 questions. If so, you're ahead of the curve. Now, let me start with a story from my own experience. Last month, an existing client reached out to me about designing a new website for her. Now, instead of jumping straight into discussing colors and layouts and pages, I used these 4 questions, which completely transformed the conversation. And actually, it revealed that a website wasn't what she actually needed at all. What she needed was an Etsy store. And yes, I lost out on a great project because of these questions, but it did strengthen the relationship I have with this client, and that's invaluable. So let me break down these 4 power questions that can revolutionize your client relationship. Question number 1. Why do you need this project? This may seem obvious, but it's remarkable how many designers overlook this fundamental question. When you ask a client why they need something, you're doing 2 important things. First, you're showing them that you care about their business objectives, not just the design deliverables. Second, you're often uncovering the real problem that needs solving. What a client wants and what they need are not always the same thing. I talked about this back in episode 286 of the podcast, in an episode titled, Forget What They Want, Give Your Design Clients What They Need. Now, if you've never listened to that episode or you haven't heard it in a while, you may want to go back and listen to that one. Now, I had a client last year who came to me wanting a new logo. When I asked why they needed it, it turned out that their real issue was that their current branding wasn't working well on social media. Now, this completely changed our approach to the project, and we ended up creating a comprehensive brand system instead of just a logo. It's want versus need. And asking why they need a project can often put you on the right track to providing a solution for them. Now, question number 2 is, what results do you expect from this project? Now, this question is, it's just pure gold. It helps to establish clear success metrics, and it ensures that both you and your client, that you're both aligned on what constitutes a successful project outcome. Now, when you pair this back with question number 1 of why they need it, asking the client what results they expect can help you determine what is actually required. I took over a website for a new client when her designer decided to shut down his business. I guess he was probably one of the 70% of freelancers who fail after the first few years, the ones I talked about a couple of episodes ago. Anyway, when I acquired this new client and I took over her website, she thought it was probably a good time to maybe refreshen things, freshen up the website with a new designer. And when I asked what she expected from a site refresh, she replied that she would like to increase traffic to her website to help boost her business. Well, upon reviewing her website, it was evident that she was already getting plenty of traffic. But that traffic wasn't converting into sales. So we determined that what she needed wasn't more traffic, it was better targeted traffic. So instead of redesigning the website, we decided to leave the layouts and the visuals and everything as is. And instead, we concentrated on just rewriting the content with an SEO strategy in mind. And within a few months, the bounce rate on her website went way down, and more visitors were booking her services through her website. She got the results she was expecting via a boost in her business, all because I asked her what results she was expecting. Now that brings me to question number 3. Who is your target audience? Now, this one seems basic, but you'd be amazed at how many clients haven't really thought this through. And I'm not talking about simple demographics like, oh, I cater to males, or I cater to females, or I cater to people between the ages of 20 and 40. No, I mean really understanding who they're trying to reach. The more a client knows and understands about their target audience, the easier it is to market to them, which makes it easier for you to deliver designs that work. Now, I'm not going to go over defining a target audience. That's an entire podcast episode in of itself. Note to self, Mark, make a podcast episode about defining target audiences. Okay. Now, who is your target audience is a question you should always ask, even if you think you know the answer. Because even if you do, it's worth going through the process to ensure that what you think is actually correct. Now, question number 4 is, how will you measure success? Now, this final question is crucial because it turns subjective opinions into objective metrics. It's also a great way to demonstrate the value of your work when a project is complete. In my experience, most clients don't think about this measurement before contacting a designer, and yet it's a crucial part of understanding whether or not the solution that you as a designer provide to them is successful. In my previous case study of that website I took over, that client was able to measure success because she saw an increase in bookings of her services coming directly through her website. Without a way to measure success, there's no way of knowing if the project was worth it or not. So those are the 4 questions. Why do you need this project? What results do you expect from this project? Who is your target audience? And how will you measure success? Now let me share some real-world examples of how to use these questions effectively. I'll walk you through some actual client scenarios I've experienced, and I know many of you have probably faced similar situations in your business. First, let's talk about timing. When should you ask these questions? Well, from my experience, the sweet spot is during that initial consultation. You know, the part after you've built a little bit of rapport with them, but before diving into the actual specifics of the project. Now, you don't want to ambush a client with these questions the moment they sit down, either in person or over a Zoom call or something. You got to ease into them, make sure they're comfortable, and then you start asking. Now, let me share an example. Last year, I had a client meeting, this is through Zoom, of a restaurant owner who wanted to, quote unquote, refresh their brand. Now, typically, designers might just jump straight into discussing logos and color schemes, but instead, I started with the first of our power questions. Why do you need this project? Well, their initial response was pretty standard. Well, our look is outdated. Okay, I could see that. But here's where the magic happens. I stayed quiet for a moment after hearing that answer. And this is a lesson that I learned years ago. And it's actually a technique used by great interviewers. If you want an example, just look on Netflix and look for My Next Guest Needs No Introduction with David Letterman. And watch how David masters this technique with his guests. He'll ask a question, they'll answer it, and then he'll just stare at them. He won't say anything. And before you know it, the guest is divulging even more, going deeper into it. And that's where you really get the great value from his interviews. Well, when I did this with my client, that awkward silence after he answered prompted him to continue talking. And they revealed that they were actually planning to expand to a second location, and they were worried that their current branding wouldn't appeal to the new neighborhood's demographic. Well, you can see how just asking that question now completely changed the scope and direction of the project. Instead of talking about a simple refresh, we were now talking about positioning their brand for multi-location growth. And I got there by asking that one question: why do you need this project? Now here's another real-life scenario. I had a client approach me for a website design. He was a professional speaker who wanted to, quote unquote, modernize their online presence. When I asked the second of our power questions about what was expected results, the client initially said that they just wanted to, quote unquote, look more professional. But watch what happened when I followed up with, how will that help your business? Suddenly, I uncovered that they were trying to transition from corporate speaking engagements, which is what they'd been doing, to more prestigious keynote opportunities at major conferences. And this completely shifted our approach to the project. It gave us a better focus and a goal that was much more precise for us to reach for. Now, I just want to give you a little tip here. You should keep a document or a note somewhere, whether it's on paper or something on your computer, something handy that has follow-up questions for each of these 4 power questions. For example, when asking about a target audience, I often follow up with questions like, where do they currently interact with your brand? Or what frustrations do they express? Or what competing solutions are they considering? You see, each of these 4 power questions can be complemented with follow-up questions to help dive deeper into what the client actually needs. Okay, let's talk about handling resistance. Sometimes clients may seem reluctant to answer these questions, especially if this is a new relationship and you're still building it. I had one client recently who just kept saying, I just want something that looks good. Now, in these situations, I use what's called the why ladder. Basically, it's asking the question why to each answer the client gives until we get to the real root of their needs. Now, if you're a parent, you've probably experienced this simple and yet powerful question ad nauseum from your child. Oh dear, it's time to go to bed. Why? Because it's getting late. Why? Because we spend more time reading than usual. Why? Because you kept asking for one more story. I know, it's cute, but it's also annoying in the same way. But when used in the proper situation, asking why can reveal the deeper needs of your clients. Why do you say you just want something that looks good? Because it'll make me look more professional. Well, why do you need to look more professional? Well, it's because I want to raise my rates and my current website looks cheap and it doesn't reflect the prices that I want to charge. By asking why, we went from wanting something that looks good to needing something that showcases their expertise and their value, which is an entirely different project. Here's another scenario that many of you might relate to. A client comes to you wanting a brochure. When you ask about measuring success, they might say, we just need something to hand out at a trade show. This is where our 4th question becomes crucial. I usually follow up with, well, how many leads do you currently get at a trade show? What percentage of those convert to sales? What would make this brochure project a worthwhile investment? Knowing these answers can significantly help you when designing a solution for your clients. Now, let's talk about documenting these responses. The key is having a consistent way to record and reference these answers that your clients give you, because you will want to refer back to them during and after the design process. So whether you're using some sort of CRM software or again, just keeping notes in a book, you want to make sure that you record their answers. Now, here's some quick tips for implementing these questions. First, send or ask them in advance if you're doing a formal proposal. You also want to use them as you structure your project brief. Make sure the client understands that you know exactly what it is that they want because of these questions. You also want to reference them during project milestones. As you're showing them an example or an update, you can refer back to those questions to show them that you're following exactly what was expected. And then you want to include them in your project wrap-up in order to report back to the client that, hey, this is what we talked about at the beginning. Here are the questions. These are the answers. And look, was the follow-through. And we checked off all the boxes. Remember, clients often don't know what it is that they don't know. And these questions help them think about their projects in ways they may not have considered. I had a client last week who came in wanting new cover artwork for their podcast. But through asking these questions, we discovered that their real need wasn't new artwork, but a more refined tagline that better explained the show. The key to making these questions work is flexibility. You might not ask them in exactly this order, and you may phrase them differently depending on your client. And you might or might not have follow-up questions for each one. The important thing is understanding the purpose behind each question and using them to guide your client towards better project outcomes. Now, before we end today's episode, I want to remind you about our Resourceful Designer community. If you're finding value in these strategies, you'll love connecting with other designers who are implementing these same principles in their business. Visit resourcefuldesigner.com/community to join today. And remember, these 4 power questions, they aren't just about gathering information. They're about positioning yourself as a strategic partner rather than just a service provider. And that, my friends, is how you build a sustainable and profitable design business. So that's it for today's episode. If you found this helpful, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. And don't forget, please tell a fellow design friend about Resourceful Designer and how it can help them with their design business. Until next time, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your design business. Stay creative. For your enjoyment, here's another Resourceful Designer intro recorded by Wayne Henderson of MediaVoiceovers.com. Oh, I have a long history with that ape.
And now your host, whose favorite Mario game is Donkey Kong. Oh, the quarters he's wasted. Mark Decote.